footsteps, knocks. We've had lights flashing in rooms. It's a huge piece of American history, and it's also a piece of paranormal history.
What if the most terrifying haunted house in America wasn't haunted at all? The mystery of the Conjuring House has just been unraveled, and you won't believe the truth. Forget the ghosts, forget the demons, forget the Hollywood jump scares. The real story behind the whispers and the screams isn't supernatural terror. It's a story of profound human tragedy and psychological torment, and in many ways, that's far, far worse. Before we get to the family that made the house infamous, we have to understand the ground itself. A patch of earth some say was soaked in sorrow long before the first floorboards were ever laid. A land stained by tragedy. Before the movie The Conjuring was ever made, and before anyone knew who Ed and Lorraine Warren were,
my life and my husband's life. Terrible, horrible, horrible place.
the old Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island, already had a scary reputation. It's weird, but the old farmhouse, built around 1736, saw many years of sad events. We're not just talking about one or two bad things. We're talking about a lot of real recorded sadness. What was happening there? Records show that on or near this one property, many people took their own lives. Some kids and adults drowned in the water there. One person was poisoned and 4 men froze to death. One creepy story is about Mrs. John Arnold, who, at 93 years old, reportedly ended her life in the barn. These sad events, which are part of history and not ghost stories, made the place feel heavy and sad, like a thick fog.
Nana?
This made local people whisper that the land itself, not just the house, might be cursed by all the unhappiness it had seen. You see, the same family, the Arnolds, lived on the farm for 8 generations. This made the house a big part of the local stories. But the scariest things people say about the house don't just come from official records. They come from spooky stories told by people over and over again. As these scary stories were passed down, told around fires and in town, people started to mix up what was real and what was just a good, scary story. People who don't believe in ghosts say that all the bad things that happen there are probably just sad coincidences that have been made to seem like a bigger deal over time because people like to find patterns in things. But for people who do believe in ghosts, all of these true stories make it seem like something evil might be hiding in that part of Rhode Island. And then, the story started to include sad things that happened in other places. The most famous and saddest story connected to the house is about an 11-year-old girl named Prudence Arnold. People said she was attacked and killed on the farm by a worker. It's a horrible story that makes the house seem even more cursed. But the crazy thing is, historical records show that this terrible thing did happen, but it was in a different town called Uxbridge, Massachusetts. It had nothing to do with the Arnold farm. Still, through rumors and scary stories, her sad story got attached to the farmhouse, making its scary reputation even worse. This is a good example of how a real tragedy from somewhere else.
Just Cindy. No. Wait. We need this.
Why do we need pictures of Cindy?
She didn't trigger it.
What do you mean she didn't trigger it?
Somebody's with her.
Can get mixed up with a supposedly haunted place, especially when people are scared and want a good ghost story. You see, Bathsheba Sherman was a real person born in 1812. People accused her of being a witch and of killing a baby, but she was never found guilty in court. The truth is, while she lived nearby, she never lived at the old Arnold estate. But in the story, she became the evil ghost who cursed the land after sacrificing her own baby to the devil. These were wild stories that weren't based on any real proof. They started because people in her time were very superstitious and got even more famous because of the movie The Conjuring. Bathsheba's story became the biggest and scariest ghost story about the house, even though the real woman was not like that at all. Her story shows how a place that already had a lot of real sadness became the perfect spot for scary stories, rumors, and fears about ghosts. Even though the land already had a sad and spooky past, when the Perrin family moved there in 1971, they believed they woke up something that had been hiding in the dark. The family thought they were getting their perfect dream house in the country. They didn't know they were stepping into a nightmare that had been building for years. A nightmare that would start with a quiet whisper, not a loud scream. The Perrins arrive, Whispers in a House of Dreams. In January of 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perrin, along with their 5 young daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, moved into the old Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island.
We were trying to move out the previous owner while we were trying to move in a family of 7. So it was pretty chaotic.
Enchanted by its rustic colonial charm and its expansive 8.5-acre landscape, the family saw the centuries-old 14-room farmhouse as the absolute perfect escape from city life, a doorway to a quieter, simpler, more wholesome existence. It seemed, for a moment, like a dream come true. However, almost immediately, within days of settling into their new home, that idyllic dream began to fray, to unravel at the edges, in subtle, deeply unsettling ways. What initially appeared to be the normal, expected quirks of a very old house quickly began to take on a more disturbing, almost intelligent tone. The first signs were subtle, easy to dismiss, but maddeningly persistent. Household items, particularly cleaning tools, began to mysteriously disappear, only to reappear days later in the most unusual, illogical places. Carolyn, a meticulous housekeeper, noticed her broom constantly shifting locations on its own. She'd leave it in a corner, turn her back, and find it leaning against a different wall moments later. Then, small, inexplicable piles of dirt would mysteriously form in the center of freshly swept kitchen floors. These odd disturbances didn't seem overtly threatening at first, not in a terrifying way, but they served to relentlessly break the family's sense of normalcy, their sense of control over their own home, hinting at something unseen, something mischievous, meddling with their most basic daily routines. Rational explanations, drafts from old windows, simple forgetfulness in a large new house, the natural settling of ancient timbers, quickly wore thin as the activity became more frequent, more brazen, and more utterly inexplicable. But let's not forget, it was the family dog whose behavior was perhaps the most disturbing initial sign for the Perrin family. Their dog, who was supposed to be a courageous and protective animal, had suddenly, almost overnight, started showing a fiery, almost panicked temper. He would stand in the middle of a room and begin growling menacingly at empty corners, the fur on his back raised. He developed a sudden, absolute refusal to enter certain rooms, and he showed a particular, bone-deep terror of the dark, musty cellar. It's often said that animals have a kind of sixth sense, a sensitivity that exceeds human perception. Their palpable, entirely uncharacteristic fear only served to amplify the growing, creeping unease of the Perrin family. It was no longer just a series of strange coincidences. It felt as if the house itself had become aware of them, as if it was watching them, subtly loosening its grip on the normal, and now, almost playfully, beginning to assert its own unseen presence. As days turned into weeks, it became terrifyingly, undeniably clear that something profoundly unnatural was at work in their new home. The kids, the 5 young daughters, began to whisper amongst themselves about hearing disembodied voices echoing from empty rooms. About seeing fleeting shadows darting down hallways, or about catching their toys moving slowly, deliberately, on their own. Andrea, the oldest and perhaps most observant of the Perrin sisters, later recalled feeling a palpable weight in the air at night, a heavy, oppressive presence that felt like it was wrapping itself around her as she tried to sleep. Doors would creak open on their own, even when latched.
Follow me this way.
The sound of footsteps would echo from the floors above when everyone was downstairs.
Nana? Nana?
The once charming, rustic old house began to feel suffocating, menacing. What had initially struck the Perrin family as a series of strange but harmless coincidences would soon reveal itself to be just the quiet, deceptively gentle beginning of a haunting, a terrifying ordeal that would come to define their lives and haunt their memories for many, many years to come. Before the true terror was unleashed, the house played a cruel trick, lulling the children into a sense of security with spirits that seemed more like gentle guardians than vengeful demons. This is where it gets wild. In the early weeks after moving into the old Arnold estate, before the real terror began to take hold, the Perron family, particularly the children, encountered what seemed to be gentle, almost comforting supernatural presences. The truth nobody expected is that these early paranormal experiences stood in stark, almost unbelievable contrast to the profound horror that would come later. The 5 Perron daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, began to speak, not with fear, but with a strange kind of childlike acceptance of invisible caretakers who shared their home. These initial entities were not aggressive or frightening in the least. Instead, they seemed to act like watchful, almost benevolent guardians. Their presence felt most strongly around the children. Household objects were moved, not thrown violently across the room or broken, but gently, almost playfully placed elsewhere, as if in a game or as part of some long-forgotten daily routine. Doors would creak open by themselves, and soft whispers would echo through rooms, not with menace or threat, but with what felt like simple curiosity, as if the former residents were just trying to get a look at the new family. Cindy Perron, one of the younger daughters, frequently reported the distinct, comforting feeling of being gently tucked into bed at night by unseen hands. At first, naturally, she assumed it was her mother, Carolyn, checking on her. But then she began to notice a strange, sweet, almost cloying scent that would linger in the air after these tuck-ins. Something floral and unfamiliar, a scent none of the family members could identify. Andrea Perron, the eldest sister, would later recall in her memoirs that these initial spirits seemed to operate almost entirely out of habit or even a strange spectral affection, not out of any discernible hostility. One entity in particular was said to gently give goodnight kisses on the foreheads of the sleeping girls and was often felt repositioning their blankets, as though it were a spectral, doting nursemaid from a bygone era, still dutifully tending to the children in the house. These gentle, almost whimsical encounters created a bizarre, almost surreal sense of calm, of even a strange familiarity within the otherwise creaky, mysterious, and increasingly unnerving old house. You see, for the Perrons, particularly the children, it started to feel as if they weren't being haunted in the classic, terrifying sense, but were simply sharing the space with the lingering, harmless remnants of the past. They began to see these presences as former occupants who had, for whatever reason, never quite managed to leave, but who were not, in themselves, unfriendly. The children, with their natural adaptability, learned to adjust to life with these nice, if invisible, spirits. They would talk occasionally and casually about them, almost as if they were distant, eccentric members of an extended family. The strange idiosyncrasies of this old home, like toys appearing and disappearing at will, or doors gently opening by themselves, began to take on a peculiar, almost comforting sort of familiar domestic rhythm. The thing is, this early phase in the haunting was more about a strange, surreal adjustment to life with an unexplained phenomenon rather than a descent into outright fear. Yet, in retrospect, this period of perceived calm, this illusion of benign spirits, only served to leave the family dangerously under a delusion, because the gentle, almost protective veil of these benign spirits was reportedly stretched thin over them, masking something far darker lurking beneath. This transitory, almost dreamlike tranquility may have been, in the end, the most hazardous, most cruel delusion of all, because eventually, and with a chilling abruptness, the perceived warmth of these gentle spirits started to withdraw, to fade away, replaced by something much, much colder, something far more invasive and malevolent. Andrea would eventually insinuate, with the benefit of hindsight, that these initial icons of gentleness had either been violently dethroned or perhaps simply overwhelmed and pushed aside by something far, far more sinister and powerful that also inhabited the house. All that the family had once rationalized as a quiet, quirky cohabitation had, almost overnight, turned into a fast-growing, deeply personal menace. And now, in retrospect, that former starry-eyed gentleness seemed like it might well have just been the deceptive, eerie calm, leading to a very long and a very, very violent storm, foreshadowing nothing less than the first terrifying chapter of a real-life horror story, a story much more nightmarish than any of them had ever dared to imagine. Just when the family thought they were dealing with playful ghosts, a child's terrifying confession would suggest the house wasn't just haunted, it was a tomb.
That house really had very, 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 very bad vibe.
7 dead soldiers in the walls. One of the most haunting, most spine-chilling moments during the Perron family's terrifying time in the old Arnold estate came not from a violent poltergeist or a spectral apparition, but from an unsettling, whispered revelation from young Cindy Perron. Amid the already mounting, almost daily strangeness that was gripping the household, Cindy confided in her older sister Andrea that she had been hearing whispers, not faint or muffled, but clear, insistent, and unrelenting, that said, 7 dead soldiers are buried in the walls. The message wasn't vague or dreamlike. It was distinct, eerie, and deeply, horrifically specific. Unlike the previous oddities of misplaced brooms or creaking doors, this statement felt deliberate, targeted, as though a voice from beyond the grave, a voice tied to the very structure of their home, wanted its terrible truth to be acknowledged. The horrific idea that human remains could be hidden, entombed within the home's very structure, cast a new, deeply chilling, and profoundly personal shadow over the family's entire understanding of the haunting they were experiencing. This wasn't about playful spirits anymore. Cindy Perron was just a young girl when her world turned upside down. From the very first days in their new house, something felt wrong. Cindy had always been a sensitive child, especially when it came to things she couldn't explain. But this time, it was more than just a spooky feeling. It was deep, it was strong, and it hit her like a wave. She became very quiet. She stopped playing. She didn't want to talk much anymore. She looked scared all the time, like something was following her. Every night was a nightmare. Cindy said she couldn't sleep. She would lie in bed frozen with fear, wide awake for hours, her eyes wide open. She believed there were old skeletons, the bones of dead soldiers, hidden just behind her bedroom walls.
Tell your father.
And there was this really funky smell in my bedroom last night. It reeked like something died.
Is it still there?
She thought they were watching her, listening to her breathe, waiting for something. Even though no one could see them, Cindy said she could feel them there. Her fear was so strong that her brothers and sisters began to feel scared too. They saw how nervous she was, always looking at the walls like something was moving behind them. She whispered to herself, never loudly. Her siblings didn't understand what was wrong, but they couldn't ignore it. Her fear spread like a cold wind through the whole house. Everyone started to feel it. It was like her fear had moved into their home and refused to leave. Roger and Carolyn Perron, Cindy's parents, tried their best to help. They told her it was just a dream, or maybe her mind playing tricks on her. They wanted her to feel safe, but the truth is, even they were starting to feel that something strange was happening. They were practical people. They didn't believe in ghosts, and they tried to keep calm. But deep down, they knew something wasn't right. There was a feeling in the house, something heavy and dark, like the house had its own secrets and pain buried in its bones. Then came the moment no one would forget. Cindy finally told them the full truth. In a soft voice, she said that she believed dead soldiers were hidden in the walls. That was why she couldn't sleep. That was why she was always scared. She truly believed their spirits were trapped in the house, stuck between life and death, and watching her every move. Here's the strange part. There was never any proof of what Cindy said. No one ever found any bones. No repairs on the house ever uncovered any hidden skeletons. No records from history showed anything like what Cindy described. There was no hard evidence at all, but her story didn't fade. In fact, it became one of the most unforgettable parts of the family's time in the house. Even years later, people still talk about Cindy's words. Paranormal experts, ghost hunters, movie makers, and writers all include her story when they talk about the haunted house. It became one of the key moments in the house's legend. Even people who don't believe in ghosts agree that Cindy's fear was real and powerful. Her words may not have proven anything with facts, but they left a deep mark on everyone who heard them. So was the Conjuring House ever truly haunted? Or just haunted by belief itself? What do you think? Mass hysteria or real evil? Let us know. Like and subscribe.